Hi, my name is Brett Linkletter, CEO and founder of Misfit Media, the best damn restaurant marketing agency on the planet. Here at Misfit, we help restaurant owners grow and scale their business through strategic online marketing practices. Right now, you're listening to our podcast, Restaurant Misfits, where we'll discuss all things related to restaurant marketing, management, and everything else in between growing a restaurant business. This podcast is also brought to you in collaboration with Total Food Service. For over 30 years, Total Food Service has provided the restaurant and food service industry with exclusive interviews to the latest news on products, trends, associations, and events. You can sign up for a free monthly subscription by visiting totalfood.com today. And from all the misfits over here, we hope you enjoy the show. Cheers. In this episode, I interview Ken McGarrie, who's the founder of Korgen Hospitality, which is a restaurant consulting group. He's also a new published author on his new book, The Surprise Restaurant Manager. And I'll tell you, after our conversation, I am personally so excited to read this book. We talk about a number of interesting topics, from hiring and finding new staff, to training your staff, to a number of the problems that Ken has seen in the restaurant industry and how he, as a consultant, approaches these problems. He's huge on having measurable results, which I think a lot of restaurateurs could get behind. You know, I think a lot of times in this industry, we want to make things better, but we lack the ability to measure our success. And he's huge on this, which I personally absolutely love as a marketer. I think it's great. You know, for us, marketing is about measuring success as well. And so we definitely resonate on this topic. Ken is such a cool, interesting guy. He got into this industry actually kind of by accident. He was a musician, wanted to be in a band for life, but then fell in love with the restaurant space. And so there's a lot of interesting topics. I think any restaurateur would absolutely benefit from this episode. A lot of interesting tips and insights from Ken. And so without further ado, let's dive right in. Ken, how are you doing?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show. So you have an interesting background. I know we were kind of just discussing on it right before we started the show, but tell us about your background. I know you said that you were a musician, or you were attempting to be a musician, or whatever the case. Then you found yourself in the food space. So tell us how that all happened for you.
Yeah, I think that my first love was definitely music. And I came up thinking that was going to be the end all be all, travel around in a van, do that. But while I was doing that, I was serving, bartending. Then I realized very quickly I wasn't massively talented at being a musician. So it's a great hobby. I enjoyed my time doing it in college. But what really took hold was working in the restaurant industry. And so just started how a lot of people started, is serving, bartending. Actually, my first job was as a dishwasher at Chuck E. Cheese.
Wow. No way.
And yes, I did wear the mouse outfit. Before you ask, 100%. That was part of the job. Wash dishes, then go out and wave at cars, or go to birthday parties in the mouse outfit.
That's a throwback. Are they still around?
They are. I will admit that I am so old that when I started, it was Showbiz, and then it turned into Chuck E. Cheese, which the only real difference is that they changed the little animatronic things that, come out and scare kids during their children's parties. But otherwise, it's still kind of the same concept.
God, I think when I was a kid, I've only been like 2 or 3 times, but it was kind of scary for some kids. I feel like that robotic mouse type thing.
They always moved very it's terrifying for children. I mean,
it's such a funny thing. Anyway, and now you're the founder of Korgen Hospitality. So tell us about that and what you guys do exactly.
So Korgen Hospitality is a company that is based on working with restaurants, large or small, to help develop, whether they are in the process of opening or they're already open and they're trying to figure out maximum profitability or improving their hospitality. And Korgen is that. I think that's probably the best term for using it, is a consulting firm. And I firmly admit, and even write on my website, that I fully acknowledge that being a consultant in this industry is a pejorative. A lot of people use the term consultant, and quite honestly, it does not have a great name. So when I built the company with my wife, I built it based on a lot of things to try to redeem what it is to actually advise restaurants and not just come in and point at problems and then just
Yeah.
take your check and walk away.
100%. Yeah, no, I want to actually discuss with you because I saw this on your website and I think you go into some pretty deep detail on this, which I respected that. I think that's really cool because I think like any restaurateur approaching a consulting firm, you're literally addressing exactly, I think, their hesitations. What is this going to be? Are they going to take my money and run and whatever the case? So,
Happens a lot. I mean, every
totally.
restaurateur I know has a horror story about hiring a consultant. They came in, pointed at a few things, and didn't really change anything.
Yeah.
And that's and it also doesn't help that usually on resumes, whenever there's a gap in people's resume, they always write down that they were consultants. So I mean, if you ever notice that,
Yeah.
people like have a 1 year gap, like, oh, that's consulting. So when we built the company, it was really based on the fact of measurables. It's a agreement that what we are going to charge for is based on what you can actually measure. So if you come in and you say, oh, I want my service to be better, well, great. I can't magically make that happen. I can talk about your training models. I can
Yep.
talk about your pre-shifts. I can talk about all the things that you can do to make it better, but
Yep.
I can't magically do that. I can't magically make sales better. I can talk about
Yeah.
streamlining. I can talk about, but that, and that's the only thing that I charge for. And half the time that I sit down and do a consultancy with people, I give them an entire list of things that they should do to fix their business. And then I say, you don't really need me. If you have the bandwidth to do this, and this, great. And if you
Yeah.
don't, then I can help you out.
100%. No, I like what you said about it's based on measurables because even for our company, Misfit Media, our agency, right? Biggest problem in the restaurant industry when it comes to marketing is no one knows how the marketing actually works. you have so many restaurants spending thousands on billboards, radio, television, social media, all this crap, honestly. And then at the end of the day, I don't know if it worked or not. They come to me and say, oh, I don't know what happened. I don't even know, we're spending $5K a month, $10K a month in all these different directions. Well, what's working best for you? We have no idea. We've been doing this for 5-10 years. We haven't questioned it. If you can't measure the success from what you're doing, you can't scale it. And if you can't see at all what's going on, why are you doing it to begin with? But so how do you guys do that? How do you consult based on your measurables? Is there a way to measure based on like bettering service? How do you guys measure that?
There's a way of getting to it with the hopes of having better service. There are like the number of times I walk into restaurants and find out that the staff has never tasted the menu.
Oh God.
Just frightening. But you really can't build a service level based on genuine hospitality if people are given scripts and told what to push. And so a lot of times I spend a fair amount of training working with re-exposing people to the brand and understanding why they fell in love with it in the first place. And then talking about those things from passion. It's the same thing as a table touch. When you go back and do your requisite 2-bite check, you're asking because you care, because it's something that matters to you, not because your manager in the beginning of shift said, go push the salmon, and it's going bad. Because that happens more often than not. So that service level really does go back to the staff engagement more than anything.
Got it. And Ken, I know you said, originally you said you were a musician, you kind of got in the restaurant industry, bar space, kind of just by almost mistake, it seems like, right? Just kind of happened, right? Would you say everything you know today, most of your expertise in the space is purely from experience, or what else do you do to get better? How did you learn to master your craft?
Oh, I messed up a lot. That's exactly how I got to where I am, is that my first management job, I was a bartender, enjoying coming in, making myself a Bloody Mary in the morning and just staying behind the bar. And then they handed me the keys and zero training. And unfortunately, I find that a lot. I find a lot of, there's definitely training for servers and bartenders and other positions, but I really don't see a depth of training when it comes to management, especially when you get to the mechanics of the philosophy of it, of how to turn tables or how to really dive into improve your online reviews, and even more to the point of how to deal with negativity and how to not burn out. And that was really kind of the whole point behind writing the book. It was simply you have the keys, great, now let's talk about how you can build this, because being a
Yep.
restaurant manager to me, it's boot camp. You don't go to boot camp just so you just stay in boot camp. You go to boot camp because you're going off to something greater.
Yeah.
Being a restaurant manager, if you went from a bartender to a manager, then you 100% went from making twice as much money for half as much time spent to being a manager where you're making half as much for twice the responsibility. So the biggest thing that I focus on with restaurant managers is, why are you doing this? And what's your end goal? And what's your passion that makes you decide that this is really your career?
I love that. I love that. There's a book. I think is it Getting to Why? Do you know what I'm talking about? What book it is? Or it starts with why?
I've heard of the name. I have not read it, but if you say good, then I will put it on my list.
I haven't read it, but one of our mentors has told me about it. I'm blanking on the name now. I think it's Start with Why or something like that. But I think, in our business too, I think that's so incredibly important is why are you doing this to begin with? I mean, it's funny. I got a buddy who's totally different industry, but he's made an app, a really cool app. Actually, what am I saying? It is in the restaurant space. It's an app that's supposed to, it's kind of like, you can imagine it like a Yelp meets Instagram type deal. More of a social review platform, but there's no negativity. It's only positive. So you recommend places, right? And
wow.
He took a pretty damn early investment that I didn't think he needed. And I was just, I asked him, well, why did you need that? We need the money. Well, what do you need the money for? Well, I don't know. We just need the money. And then I said, well, why are you doing this? And I think people, they start doing something and they don't even know why they're doing it. And it sounds good. It feels good. They think you're supposed to do it, but really, why are you doing this? It's such an important question. And people forget
there's a
way
romantic
too much
aspect. Absolutely. And it really depends on what station in life that you're doing this and why. And for a lot of young managers, it's because they are rightly wanting to build their future in it. And they see this as their next logical step. Working as a server or a bartender, you are definitely required to focus on tips, and that can be hit or miss. So that there's consistency with that. So that seems attractive. The number of people that I know who've retired and said, you know what, I've always wanted to open a restaurant and it looks like fun. That literally that's my bread and butter, is the people honestly who've said, oh, this seems like an easy thing to do. And then realizing that there's a reason that restaurants fail and how really, really challenging it is. The biggest owners that I run into that have challenges are the ones that say, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to do operations. I just want somebody else to run it. Well, that's a death blow 9 times out of 10. You have to be involved in it, or else you shouldn't be running it to begin with. It shouldn't be yours.
Yep. 100%. 100%. Question for you, actually. I'm kind of curious because you've worked with a lot of restaurateurs. You've seen a lot of winners and losers in this industry. I actually just spoke literally right before this podcast, another podcast with a chef named Brian Lewis. Really incredible chef, really cool guy, smart guy, tons of experience. And he went from, a chef, traditional chef, doing really well. I mean, he had a very successful career, still does. Now he's moved into the ownership role, and he's running 3 going on 4 locations now. And he was talking about, elevating from the chef role to the owner was like for him becoming, going from the artist to the art dealer, right? And he says that kind of transition has been really, really interesting for him to see. It's a totally different skill set. For you as a restaurant consultant, I mean, have you seen, and one thing we got into, by the way, was, I mean, I see in my business, I see oftentimes his story, the chef turned to owner. I also see the guy who worked in finance say the restaurant space sounds fun. I want to dive into it. And I think, right? So I'm curious for you, have you seen, or maybe not at all, have you seen successes more or less in either side of owner, the finance guy who dives into space, or the chef? Because you could argue that, say that the guy who is in the finances knows his numbers and knows what to do in that scenario. You have the chef who he knows the food and the service side and this and that. Have you seen winners or losers on either side, or does it really not matter from what you've seen?
Absolutely. And to me, it goes right to culture, because I'll use an example of a current client that we have. An amazing space here in Chicago, incredibly popular. And one of the first things I did when I got connected with them is I polled the staff and said, why are you here? What is your motivation for choosing to be here every single day? And their response categorically was, we love the owners. They're amazing. They're here all the time. It's just, it re-energizes my love of the hospitality industry. They just love the ownership. And when you meet them, you understand exactly why. But they're looking to scale. They're looking to open up a place in 30 miles from here and a place in Michigan and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And my conversations with them have everything to do with how do you get that culture into another place that doesn't have your influence. So when you talk about owners, a lot of times, and I use this term in the most positive way possible, they're cult leaders. They legitimately are people are drawn to them. They're excited about what they offer, and they're really happy to work with them. But that only works as long as they're in the space, which is why I go back to people that choose not to be involved and they want to be hands off. They traditionally fail because people want that affirmation. So the successful brands are the ones that I think are able to replicate that out. Probably the most perfect example of that is like a Danny Meyer, who, as my understanding, with every new person that joins any of his concepts, he at least makes sure that part of that orientation the first 30 days is a meeting with him, is a conversation, so that they understand exactly. Somebody who has that massive level of success, there's still that I'm doing this and I'm taking ownership because I believe in Danny Meyer and I believe what he does.
Yeah.
And so that model, I think, works really well. And the absence of that is where I've seen places go open in other locations and immediately
totally
down.
No, but I like what you said though. Owners are cult leaders. That is so true.
That's my second book. I'm just gonna go ahead and let you know that is the exclusive. That is my second book, is about exactly that. Is that term, if you look at it, it's so true. You build a following in the most positive way possible, and you empower people around you.
100%. Well, let's talk about your first book, the restaurant, the Surprise Restaurant Manager. When do you launch this book?
So it is on pre-sale right now.
Nice.
Where all finer books are sold, and I will blatantly plug that, and it moves by hour. So maybe when this pops up, it might not be there, but right now it's the #1 service industry book on the new releases on Amazon. So I have to tell you, I watch it like just every hour by hour, and it click off and I'm like, oh, and then 2 hours later it pops up. So I've gotten a little obsessive with it, but the book is available as just a regular print version. Nice. There is an audio version on Audible.
Yep.
And there is an e-version. So, and I purposely made sure that the e-version, which is only available on Amazon because it's the only way that I could lock in the price, is 99 cents. And I did it because it's more important for me to get the information out than anything else. And I truly want as many people to read it as possible. Someone emails me, I'll send you a PDF. It's about getting that out.
Yeah.
Because this is the information that I think is lacking in a lot of people being able to be successful or move to the next position.
Totally.
As a restaurant man.
Totally. No, I love that, man. Are you the voice in Audible?
I am the voice. Now, the forward is for the book is celebrity chef Fabio Viviani, who you might know from 2 seasons of Top Chef. I've opened about a dozen places with him nationwide, so he and I have a long history going way back. And not only did he write the forward, but he also did the first chapter of the audiobook. So you get a little bit of
that's amazing.
Well,
I think I have a copy in the mail right now. It's either arrived or probably will be arriving very, very shortly. I'll check it out for sure.
I will send anything that you need. But the only problem is Fabio is such an amazingly dynamic and thick Italian accent, and his one forward decks my 25 chapters just in charisma. He's so good at it. But it's a great start to the book. So I'm very, very, very pleased that he was a part of it.
That's so cool. Yeah, very, very cool. So, and who is your target customer for this space? Is it an owner? Is it a restaurant manager? Is it anyone in the restaurant space? Who do you want to read this book? Who's it for?
It really is restaurant managers and people who are looking to move into restaurant management. So if you are that
Got it.
person who is just getting there, then that's great. Now, the book moves in a progression. So it starts out with why are you a restaurant manager, and then how to find staff, how to interview, things that you would want to talk about in interviews, how to
Got it.
support your team on the floor. And then it moves into philosophical things, a lot more having to do with how do you deal with strong personalities? Because owners have a tendency of having strong personality. How do you deal with negativity? How do you not allow it to bother you? And then how do you use all of these tools to have work-life balance? And that's
Got it.
probably one of my biggest focuses is, because we lose so many good people in this industry to not having work-life balance. And then the final,
100%.
it's brutal. And that to me is the sadness, is that the number of people that I know who have reached out and be like, hey, great, I want to buy your book. That's great. I'm doing something different. And I'm like, because they were so good at what they did, but for some reason, working in churn and burn shops made them go, oh, I don't want to do this. And that's their representation of what it is to be in the industry. But it's not for everyone.
100%. So you said, you started with how to find staff and train them. That for me, when I speak to any prospect clients of ours or any clients of ours in general, and I hear about their biggest pain points, it's one, figuring out the marketing component, which we solve as an agency. But then the second thing is like how to find staff and train them. Because I think especially right now too, since the pandemic, I mean, I'll tell you this, we had a pretty large client base in the UK area, more specifically like London area. They're all gone because of the pandemic, right? But speaking to them about what's happened, which obviously is really sad, the government was literally paying people in the area more than to work at the restaurant. So the restaurants are like, how can I hire? It already was hard to find good people. Now it's even harder, right? Because now you're competing with salary against the government, which is insane. But anyway, what would be some of your tips on how to find good staff? What are some tips and tricks that you might have?
Well, I think that obviously, and what you're talking about, we experience all over, which is simply a challenge in finding staff. And right now in certain markets, like for example, I'm based out of Chicago, and as more things are opening up, everyone's vying for the same talent pool.
Yeah.
So there is that kind of, oh my gosh, I need so many people. And it comes from this level of like, scattershot, which unfortunately never really gets you the kind of people that you totally want. So the first thing is to be very, very cognizant of how interviews go. I actually list the 8 things that if people do it in an interview, don't hire them, because literally they're telling you who they are in interviews. One of the absolute killers for me is bashing previous restaurants. The number of times I sit in an interview and someone's like, oh, I don't like that person, and they bash down wherever that previous place was, I won't hire those people because I know that they'll exhibit the same qualities for something else. So
interesting.
It's first not tricking yourself into thinking that, hey, I can build this person. You don't have time for projects. You take people for what they are. And then we've had success with a lot of cross training and a lot of utilization and making bartenders into key holders and giving the ability as a whole for training. So simply, you're not pigeonholing, I need 8 servers and I need 4 bartenders and I need 2 hosts. It's, I need this many people and I'm going to figure out where their strengths are. And then I'm going to maneuver those things around. And that, between that and obviously reputation in the industry of, we all know the places that are chop shops, turn and burn killers. And then we also know places where people are lined up to work there just because of the culture. So
100%.
That's kind of been the edge that has continued to kind of open up. And even with the ads that we put out, I oftentimes will put in ads, we hire adults and treat you as such, because you're stating at the very beginning, hey, this is, we're not here to babysit you. We're going to work and we're going to make this happen. I also say, don't send me a resume and send me 2 paragraphs about yourself. I don't care what you write. Just send me 2 paragraphs. And then if someone automatically attaches a resume, I don't hire them. And if they only send 1 paragraph, I don't hire them, because you've given them a task at the very beginning and they either going to complete it or not. But so many people be like, well, they attached a resume, but that's okay. No, it isn't, because you said don't attach resumes. I actually write, please don't attach a resume. They're boring. And then please give me 2 paragraphs. And if they can't follow those 2 directives, they're telling you at the beginning, they're not going to
Yeah.
follow. They're not going to follow direction.
This is really good though. This is really good. It's funny. There's we do something similar at our company when we are leading up to the interview. One of the thing is specifically like upload a video to YouTube and a private link and send it to us. And there's 3 questions on it. And the amount of people that can't figure out how to create a private link on YouTube and send you a video is incredible. And it's such an easy thing though, in general, but we're a digital marketing agency. If you can't figure that out, good luck, bro.
100%. And you can Google it. I mean, if you don't know, teach yourself. Exactly. Yes. What if I know a great gaming concept that uses like an entertainment gaming basis, but they also have food and beverage. And when they do open calls, they'll purposely bring people in and they'll say, hey, it's going to take a few minutes for your interview. Everybody else who's waiting, they're out on the gaming, go out and, play some games.
Yeah.
And as they're waiting, they'll go out there and there are people who are planted that actually work for the company that are among the people who are waiting. And they watch the people who are waiting to go in. And if they walk up and they're like, hey, my name's Todd and I'm going to get you let me play. And then they're conversational, then you know that they're going to bring that same enthusiasm to the guests when they come in. But if they just walk over and they sit on their phones and they're like, and they're not engaging with anybody else, they're just waiting for their interview and they're not very friendly, then they're not going to get along with your staff and they're not going to be great at your tables.
Totally.
So long before they even walk into the interview, they have literally a snapshot of who that person is when they're not being on. And whenever you can get that as part of your interview, you get to the true nature of who somebody is. And I always thought it was genius. So anytime I can replicate it, I do it. Yeah.
That is so cool. And how do you, so I know, again, I asked you this earlier, but you said you got a lot of experience. You made a lot of mistakes. What would you say is maybe, what's your biggest failure? What's your biggest mistake you made in your experience? And then what's the lesson you learned from it?
Oh gosh. And the thing is I continue making them. So I mean, it's just
totally.
But that's good. That only makes it better. I mean, biggest mistake operationally, I think was always getting defensive and deciding that I knew what the guest would want.
Got it.
I write about it in the book that I had opened up a barbecue restaurant in Canada, and it was amazing. It literally, when I met the owner, he asked me who the 3 kings were, and because I said Freddie, Albert, and BB, he goes, "Yep, you're good," because it was all blues and barbecue. So that it was based on that level of awesome.
Nice.
But I was so self-convinced, and I was much younger in my career, that when people would come in and have challenging conversations about our barbecue because we made some definite mistakes, I was defensive. And I that's probably the biggest mistake. And I see that a lot when I'm working with people on online reviews, is that whenever they're responding, they want to defend. They want to say, oh, no, you're wrong. Instead of trying to understand the motivations behind why people reached out. So when people reach out about my barbecue shop, they were reaching out because they care and that they were invested. And instead of me seeing them as adversarial, I should have seen them as helping me try to get better.
I love that.
It's huge though. I mean, like if I was going to do it now, first off, I would allow an 86 list because we decided, 100%, we're always going to have everything, which meant that you're reconstituting brisket, and good luck on that. You make it, once it's gone, it's gone. I mean, hell, Franklin's out of Austin, Texas is a perfect example of a place to where you just go through it and it's good and it's great and it's some of the best thing in the world. Things like that we just wouldn't allow ourselves at the time to do because we thought we knew better. And at any time that I think that I know better, I'm failing 100%. And I admit that all the way through the book. The book is full of advice and suggestion, but I will say to you that it is based on me making a lot of mistakes, and there's still a lot to be learned.
I love that. Wow. I'm excited to read this book.
Good. I'm excited to get your feedback.
100%.
I hope not to be defensive.
No, 100%. No, but you said something actually that I really liked here. So I read this book recently, a couple months ago, called The Diamond Cutter.
Okay.
It's basically business teachings by the Buddha, and it's really interesting. And it's like taking Buddhism teachings into business. And it's about this guy who was like one of the second or third employees of this diamond company. And they just I think they blew up past over 100 million in sales a year and whatever the case, wildly successful. But one of the biggest things in the book that I took from it was everything in life, everything that you see interact with is empty from its own side, meaning nothing is good or bad or whatever until you give it meaning, right? So a review, like you just said, is either going to be good or bad to you or neutral or whatever you make of it, however you respond to it, right? But you've taken something, right? A review, a negative review, and you're like, no, this isn't someone bad mouthing us. We shouldn't get defensive. This is an opportunity. Like you just said, they're invested in your business. They care. They care enough to take the time out of the day and write you something about your restaurant. That's fantastic.
Which is a level of passion, though. It's all
totally.
I mean, I always think about it like a relationship. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you're arguing, as much as that's not great, there's still passion that's keeping you back and forth. It's apathy that's the killer. It's the whatever. The minute that you get to whatever, that's the problem. I can't even think of a time that I sat down and wrote somebody, oh my God, your restaurant is blah, 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 in a negative fashion. I'm the person that's probably the hardest to find. I just don't come back. So if you're not doing a good table touch, and if you're not watching, if you're not communicating with somebody like me, who's really a non-commenter, then I just go away and I never come back. If you care enough to go onto Yelp and give me a 4-paragraph about how much you hate all of us, and it's a 1-star, great. I can get you back because I can turn that negative passion into challenge. I actually in the book mentioned, because the whole focus on being right is huge. I take a 3-star Michelin restaurant and I pull an example of it that somebody did 1 star and said, you should put McDonald's on the menu because it is so bad. And it's literally arguably one of the best restaurants in the entire world.
Wow.
And the review's wrong, but the response can't be defensive. Yeah, we have 3 Michelin stars. We know what we're doing. It's I'm so sorry that you felt like that, because there's a very good possibility that their response was sticker shock, or maybe that they were on a date and it was a bad experience. 1,000 other things that might not have anything to do with the actual dining experience at all.
Ken, do you have any preference when it comes to review sites? I mean, I'll be honest. I have a lot of clients that honestly despise Yelp. I mean, I had a client I spoke to yesterday that says, we're pushing Yelp reviews. No, we got to do Google. I can't stand Yelp. Do you have any preference of these review sites, or what are your thoughts on that in general?
Well, I will tell you, if you Google me, you're actually going to see a picture of me at Yelp headquarters in a very bad sweater. I went through a sweater phase to where all I wore sweaters, and it's a very bad sweater. But when I was working at a restaurant, I actually created a philosophy that was very simply how to address online reviews and how to understand the philosophy of why someone reviews instead of going at it from that. And Yelp, Yelp found about and invited me over to the headquarters here in Chicago. So then I did that training with them. And then I did that training with about 300 people at their sales and marketing. And then they flew me out to San Francisco and I went to their coast to coast thing. So I've done a lot with Yelp. And the first thing that I say at the very beginning is, I hate Yelp 100%, because it's completely ridiculous that I work so hard to create something and make it. And I mean, train and build. And then somebody says, parking sucks, 1 star. And you're like, really?
Totally.
And then Yelp has a tendency of, and I actually train on this, is so many people stand up in the friends and family and say, hey, Yelp us. Well, their bots will sense that and will absolutely lock down all your positive reviews. And I've seen a number of restaurants, including some of my own, to where it's been flooded so much that they all suppress them. You can see it at the bottom called the unrecommended. So it's all these 5 stars that don't actually hit your rating because the bot realizes, well, you solicited it and it wasn't a genuine response. So
you're saying if a restaurateur asks their guests to leave them a 5-star review and Yelp sees a bunch come in instantly, they'll get rid of it?
Lock it. There's a restaurant here in Chicago that did that. The owner, a friend of mine, stood up and said, "Please go on Yelp." He got 50 on his friends and family, all of them suppressed, and the only thing that ever went through was the negative. So for his first 4 weeks, he had 2-star reviews. That's all he had.
But why? But
Because
why would they do that? I mean, if a guy's standing up and say, "Hey, please leave me a review," I'd really appreciate it. You know what's wrong with that?
there shouldn't be. There absolutely shouldn't be. But there is a bot that goes through on Yelp that looks for things that are overly positive, that looks for things that are all 5-star, that come in at the same time, that come in from the same IP address, that look like they were manufactured instead of organic. And
Interesting.
especially with a brand new place, then yeah, you're absolutely the ability for that to get suppressed and unrecommended happens a lot. Whereas you can do that on Google and you can get all the 5 stars that you want, and Google's not going to unrecommend you.
Got it.
But if I'm thinking about what is my favorite, I have seen far more responses from Yelp or other sites that allow for a large discourse. And the
Interesting.
more people write, the longer their dissatisfaction, the easier it is to get them back. So as much as I don't like any of those social media sites that allow them to openly bash, what they're doing is it's a table touch outside the 4 walls of the restaurant.
Yeah,
It's a
it is.
continuation. Obviously, the server missed it. Obviously, the manager missed it. The owner missed it. Everybody missed it. But
Yeah,
you're still table touching 3 weeks later because somebody went on Yelp and talked about it. Thank
I love
God for
that.
that.
I love that you mentioned that, because I think when the pandemic first hit, like a lot of restaurants we were speaking to were like, well, how do we create that restaurant experience outside of our 4 walls? I was like, well, you do it in a number of ways. One is, like you just said, through reviews. One is on social media, yada yada yada, whatever, right? But I think people forget that they forget that is an extension of your business. So many restaurateurs have been in business forever. I don't know. I've seen this. I've seen a lot of resistance to some of this social media, technology, digital stuff. Why is that? Have you seen the same thing? Like, why are they so resistant? Why not embrace this? This is good for you for the most part.
I think that's, I'm not going to put it all to age, but there is definitely an aspect and an understanding that communication through a digital age, especially with social media, is drawn by certain, usually marketing. And marketing, to me, I will tell you that when I moved to Chicago and worked with a restaurant group, it changed my entire philosophy on marketing, because I was amazed to find out that the marketing team was in the initial conversations about new concepts. So it wasn't like, hey, we've created this and here's the menu and here's what we're going to call it and this is what we're going to do. And hey, marketers, go market this. It's, hey, we need to come up with a name of a restaurant. Marketing team, talk to me about what's good, what's trending. Hey, we need to do design. What do you want to put on the walls? Well, they're putting pictures of Ryan Reynolds on this place in New York, so you should look at what they're doing. And they brought this whole aspect to it, which meant that marketing acumen, because they speak for who you're truly targeting at the very beginning. But what that does is it requires restaurateurs to acknowledge that marketing is intrinsically important at the very inception of the concept, instead of you creating it and sending it, which is no different than my barbecue restaurant, to where I created it and then told people this, you're supposed to like it, instead of taking that input earlier. And I think that's probably the resistance that you see from a marketing standpoint, is people that value it as an afterthought instead of a inception point.
Yeah. By the way, I'm again really glad you brought this up. But have you read the book The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss?
No, and I'm very familiar with Tim Ferriss, and I have not read that. You know what? I feel like that you're going to have to send me a book list after this. I feel very bad because
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
I read a lot. You're obviously an author, and I'm excited to read your book in general. But what you just mentioned is one of the principles in his book. He's like, when he came up with the title, The 4-Hour Workweek, what I thought was so brilliant is just what you said. When he was trying to figure out the title of the book, he had I think it was something like 300 different titles or something he came up with. And then he ran, I think it was just like a Google Ads campaign, a cost per click campaign. And that was it. And this one got the most clicks, the 4-hour work week. And he's like, that's my winner. Right. And this just took off. I mean,
Yep.
it's so interesting what you can use marketing for. And like you just said, I mean, people put marketing in a little box. I think for a lot of restaurants we speak to, right? Also, the thing about it is they're just stuck in traditional marketing. They're stuck doing the billboards, the radio, these kinds of things, which,
Yes.
My problem with those is you can't tell if it's working. You really can't. You can look at your bottom line and say, oh, well, sales went up. Well, was it because of the billboard, or was because your restaurant just has now went from 25% capacity to now 50 because they lifted the pandemic, so
Right.
whatever, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of factors to it, but I love what you brought up. I think that's really cool. Ken, one more thing you mentioned, I don't know, you said that you help restaurateurs also deal with strong personalities. I think this is something that most people in general need to learn how to do better. What are some of your tips around this?
So for me, I had to realize long ago that I am not a strong personality when it comes to being taking on risk. And most restaurant owners that I know, most marketers I know actually as well, are embrace risk. And so in the book, I talk about it. It's called the boulder theory. And very quickly, it's if you have a huge boulder that's in the middle of the field and you have to move it, and it takes a lot of people to move it, there's really two schools of thought. One group's going to push it as fast as they can immediately. And then if it goes the wrong way, they'll figure it out. And then the other one's going to plan it and make sure that all the trajectory, what could go wrong, and figure out all the issues. And then they'll methodically push it. But if it's a race, as long as the people who started pushing immediately, throwing everything at it, they're going to win. It's only the times when they push it the wrong way, they push into a ditch, that the people that are guarded actually win. And I, by my own nature, am guarded. I am somebody who figures out all the angles. I'll talk to restaurateurs about all the issues that they might be running into if they're doing these things. But a lot of owners are just like, we're going to make this happen. Like back to Fabio Viviani, he's one of the most headstrong people I've ever met in my entire life. So he's the person who at 4:00 will change the menu and want it done by 5. And we're going to do it. Let's just make it happen. And as an operator, I'm like, well, can we do this? Shouldn't we wait? And it's by acknowledging that there's equal benefit in both camps. That strong personality you can learn from. I've gotten more risk adverse or risk prone by being surrounded by people that have strong personalities. And in turn, they'll tell you that by having someone who looks at other angles, it's kept them out of the ditches a few times. So that's kind of those personalities I see almost categorically with owners, especially successful owners.
I can. It's so funny because you're telling this story, and this is exactly me and my partner, me and my business partner. I mean, I'm the guy who just pushes that boulder down the mountain and goes and
marketing. I'm the
I'm the crazy one. Fuck it, let's go.
100%.
Yeah.
And you're going to win the race 9 times out of 10 because you were first. You're first, but you're a pioneer, and pioneers get arrows sometimes, and that's just
But you're also totally right in the fact that I'll be like, let's do this crazy idea, and then my business partner will be like, well, let's think about this. I'm like, no, let's just do it. He's like, no, let's think about it. We think about it. Okay, he was right. Good thing we thought about it. So you kind of have to have that yin and yang.
You do.
You absolutely do need that 100%. I mean, I think in any kind of business partner relationship, I think that's the best. If you get two strong personalities, that's a recipe for destruction, I would say.
Completely agree.
Ken, what about do you have any mentors that you follow or any specific podcasts that you enjoy that help you get better in general?
Quite honestly, I mean, there are the traditional people, besides the people that I'm so fortunate to work with. And some amazing chefs. I admit at the beginning of the book that I have all love and respect for chefs because they're artists and they do what I can't do. My book is more focused on front of the house simply because that they teach me every day about things that I have no concept of. Obviously, I mentioned Danny Meyer. They're definitely restaurateurs, but to me, my biggest idols or people that I follow are in stand-up comedy of all things, because I think I think it speaks to truth. I think it speaks to unpopular opinion, and I enjoy it immensely. And so for me, that I can listen to certain comedians, certain podcasts, and then come away feeling better, stronger, with more clarity, just because of their ability to talk about something that I might not even agree with, but their ability to say it emboldens me to, move forward and speak my truth.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Um, what are I'm kind of curious. So you've worked with obviously a lot of restaurateurs. You've seen a lot of problems.
Yeah.
You've fixed a lot of problems. What do you think is the most common problem you see that just keeps coming up over and over again?
Well, I will admit to being very surprised at how many restaurants that I encounter that haven't figured out their costing model, that haven't gone through and
Mm,
streamlined their menu, that don't understand the true nature of what it costs to be able to produce a dish and how to maneuver that revenue.
got it.
But I think that the biggest single fallacy that I encounter that I think requires a total philosophical change are restaurateurs who believe that staff should be happy that they work for them. And it's that level of, I've got a stack of resumes, and if you're not working out, I got 100 people who want your job. Well, no.
Yes.
Good people in this industry can find work anywhere, especially now, legitimately. So if
Yep.
you're a restaurant owner or you're a restaurant manager, uh, every day you have to understand that your staff wakes up and makes a conscious choice. It's not every situation to where people say, oh, I have to go to work. You don't have to. You make a conscious decision every day to go work at that restaurant. And for that, your management, your ownership must be appreciative of that and say every single day, thank you for choosing to be there. So the dynamic is absolutely changed. It is not, I have this thing and you should be happy you work. It's thank you so much because I know you could work anywhere, but you choose daily to work for me. And
I love
that's
that.
that's that philosophy is going to get people to an appreciation that will lower issues with communication errors, that will lower HR issues, that will build empowerment, and that will save a lot of the hospitality industry that's working in a world that thinks of it as service versus genuine hospitality.
100%. One thing I also hear a lot, which I love this objection when someone is deciding to work with us or not, is they say, well, Brett, I don't know if we'll use your programs. What if too many customers come and we can't handle the rush? I say, well, hey, that's a great problem to have. But I well,
See,
what are
that's the bold part of you that's like, I'm just going to put as many people in as possible and
yeah.
we're going to make it work. And I'm the person at the door going, how are we going to take care of 200 people that just walked in the
Yes.
door?
So
Absolutely.
how do you do that? Any kind of tips and tricks around that?
Well, that is 100% the headstrong part of you, and that is required, that gets people to come in. Now, in that scenario, there's understanding and empathy of, well, you've now got an influx, and whether that is an acknowledgement at the door, a passing drinks, whatever that is, we understand that this situation is obviously a little untenable, but we're going to make it right. And that communication is so huge. That's why the table touching that is obviously required in restaurant management everywhere is so important, that if you're in the kitchen and you know that you're going 20 minutes on a dish, at 10 minutes, you should be at that table talking to them beforehand before it's an issue. So if you have an influx and you've got too many people, then you're talking to them before it's an issue, because people are understanding if you explain what's going on beforehand.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to rescue after it's hit the ground.
Got it. 100%. Yeah, and I think what I've noticed too is a lot of restaurants I don't even know this, to be honest. Maybe you do. Is it a new law now since the pandemic hit that you can only be at a table for 90 minutes? I know in California
Different
in some
states.
areas, different states, yeah.
In different states. We have a place in Florida. There's no limit there. Texas is obviously completely open. Chicago, for a long time, it was 6 people and only 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And And I'm sure that you have had your fill about COVID conversations throughout this entire,
Oh,
but
totally.
I think that the biggest challenge that is happening is that we have made our servers and bartenders into bouncers, and the number of consternation. And I mean, seriously,
Totally.
I remember last summer I was working with a client, and they had you're having to walk around to tell people to put on masks, and it's not only for the fact that there is literally code enforcement with cameras, and I've seen this happen, taking photos of people not wearing, and you're getting issued tickets for
Oh,
not being
God.
compliant, and all of that. It's not only the mandates from the city or the state, it's also that it was incredibly hard, especially in the beginning with the staff who were terrified. They didn't have information about what the nature of this is. Everyone's freaked out and they feel unsafe in their environment. So it created this thing to where you are purposely putting servers and bartenders and other people who aren't trained with the same level of conflict de-escalation that
Got it.
bonded security people are, in order to traverse when people are choosing not to wear masks. And it really, really drove a huge wedge in hospitality, because it's hard to then say, hey, I'm going to make great suggestions about what you want to have for dinner after you spent 10 minutes childing them to not wear, to stop taking off their mask.
Yes. God, it's so
It-
interesting what's happened.
So crazy. And then that's where I've seen a lot of resurgence of the 20% service charge and all of those things, which has its own unique challenges, both positive and negative. It is
Do you
for
coach,
a lot of reasons that was challenging.
Do you consult on your clients on, when you walk into a restaurant now and they take your temperature? I always think it's so awkward and strange when they just put that thing up to your head. It's like, come on, man. Like this is, do the,
I
what,
tell them
clients about this?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep. But so many restaurants still do this thing. I'm like, come on, man. This is not hospitable.
Training. It's just literally 3 days ago, because they do this whenever in my building, whenever you want to go to the gym, they make you go through the temperature. So the door guy comes and he goes to point it in my head. I said, just do it in my hand. And he goes, does that work? And I said, yeah, it totally works. He's like, oh, I learned something new. I just think that's just a disconnect to where nobody said, you take your temperature literally anywhere. And it's a lot more it's less invasive than making somebody lean forward and sticking it to their head. So
it's so awkward. Yeah.
It is. And again, it's the beginning of when you start out any guest experience, telling them all the things they can't do and the threats of, well, if you do this, you can't. It's very hard to then turn that into a genuine, appreciative hospitality thing.
100%.
If there is one thing that I've worked with staff, it's saying, do you remember what it was like to sit at home and when everything was closed and you were thinking you would do anything to get out of your house and you would do anything to be back at work? Don't let go of that. Don't let go of that feeling, because you have to remember how you felt 6 months ago when you were on your couch, not earning, bored, scared, all of those feelings. And now if you're in an environment or an area that's opening back up and you're dealing with the challenges of what it is to go from 0 to 100 immediately, because there are a lot, don't forget what it was.
Yeah.
And that, if I can turn it all the way back around to the book, that's why I think that the book is timely, because there are a lot of places looking for managers and a lot of bartenders and servers being handed keys and told, you're going to manage now. And that's not a recipe for success. So
got it.
That's why the books, that's why the ebook is $1, because I really just think that everybody,
Oh, 100%. No, I'm super excited. I'm super excited to read it because, my background, I've never owned a restaurant. I'm not a restaurateur. I'm a restaurant marketer, but I've enjoyed this industry so much since I first got into it, and it's incredible. And I love soaking this stuff up. That's why, honestly, when I first started this podcast, I was like, hey, I want to speak to really bright people in the restaurant industry. That's what I wanted to do. That was it. So I'm definitely gonna read this thing. And I will definitely give you my feedback. I'm excited.
Look forward to that. That's awesome.
And Ken, tell me this: what? Obviously, yes, pandemic's been tough. Whatever, a lot of changes in the space. Let's talk about now opportunities, though. What are some opportunities that you see that have opened up in the restaurant space? Maybe because of this, or just what's happened over the last year and what you see coming. What are some of the big opportunities you see happening?
I saw a lot of people who left the industry that we miss. I saw
Yeah.
some people who left the industry that should have left the industry. And
Yeah.
if anything, there is a way of doing more with less. There is a way of reinvigorating a team and cross training and cross utilizing. The people that made it back are to be celebrated. It is, I use the term industry as a badge of honor. And literally the last chapter of the book is, if you're in the industry, don't ever do these things. It's like the rules that no one ever told you, that, like,
Got
don't
it.
ever ask for comps and things like that. So,
Yes.
and I mean, it's just that straight down. Someone should have told you that when you're in another restaurant, don't ever be the last person there, because you're that guy, and don't be that guy. But with the industry itself, there's an opportunity to embrace the people who this spoke to and why they're there, and then what their hope is for, changing and progressing, because that's the big change that I'm seeing, the digital aspect, the how people are using software and different platforms to be able to bridge the gap, what it is to use delivery platforms, and how that changes your business model as well. In the same way that, I mean, and I'm sure you've seen this, if you give your food to a third party person, but they mess it up, the number of times that I've seen restaurants go, well, that delivery service, that's their problem. No, it isn't. It's yours. It is 100% a reflection of your company. So
100%.
and people lose that sight. They blame whatever third-party platform it is. But again, without those third-party platforms, we would be in a lot worse situation coming out of the pandemic. That's for sure.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I think people want to point fingers, and they can't take responsibility when you just got to. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So anyway, Ken, I mean, again, this has been an incredible conversation. I can't wait to read the book. I will 100% give you my feedback as soon as I do. It sounds incredible.
I look forward to that.
100%. And so for anyone listening to that podcast, how do they find you online?
So if you go on Amazon, you can get the 99-cent ebook. You can get the audio book that's available on Audible, and you can get the print copy. There are also, the print version is available in most other stores. If you want to support independent restaurant, or independent bookstores, then there's a Bookshop, Barnes Noble, all of those things.
Nice.
You just Google me. If you just Google me, you'll find me, and you'll find that really bad sweater picture of me. It's embarrassing. And it's
I need to find this. I need to find this sweater photo.
You know what? When you go up and you put it on YouTube to where you've got those, like, that tag picture to get people to watch it, it should just be that picture of me in a sweater standing in front of the Yelp sign. It's a real bad picture. But
yeah.
If it makes people Google me more, fine. That's hilarious.
I love it. What about social media? Are you also on social media as well? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter?
Korgen Hospitality is on Facebook, and I myself as well. And we are on LinkedIn. And I will admit that I'm slowly but surely getting into Instagram. Fabio put the post up about the book, and he got a huge response on Instagram. And
nice.
My draw seems to be more LinkedIn. So, yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, hey, Ken, thanks again for your time. And what we'll do, everyone, on this episode is I'll put all those links to your book, your LinkedIn, your Facebook, all stuff on this episode, so everyone can check it out. But again, thank you so much for your time, Ken. That was amazing. And look forward to reading the book.
Thank you so much. It's been fantastic.
Absolutely. Chat soon. See ya.